All right, so for the drama, we're going to do something a little bit different. When it came to the poetry analytical review, you really dove deep into it. You figured out all the little nuances of the poem to really understand like why words matter, how to be succinct and say a lot in very little. Great job, right? And you included your historical context to understand why the poem maybe was written the way it was, all the little elements to it. So you really, okay, we got the essay out of our system. For the short story, you created like a PowerPoint and you were able to kind of break it down into the little pieces to be able to say, okay, here's my plot, here's my setting, here's the pieces from the story that show me what it is. Now you get to create something all your own. All right, you get to create a drama. Don't panic. You might not feel like a creative person, and that's okay. The goal here isn't necessarily about creativity, which it is, but it's also about application of understanding what a drama includes. So, we talked about last week about all the different parts of a drama. We talked about the plot, the characters, the setting, the stage direction, conflict theme, historical and cultural context, the usual stuff. But here, instead of pulling out the raisin in the sun and doing this analytical review, which, I mean, if I wanted to look at that, I would just Google. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I already know about the raisin in the sun. That's totally fine. Love it. Done it. What I want you to do is create a drama that includes all the parts. Okay? So, before you panic, don't worry. You do not have to write an entire play. That's not what we're doing here. What I want you to do is give me parts of a play. How are you going to do that? Okay, first and foremost, as with anything, you got to start somewhere. And here we're going to start with the plot. You can make up any plot you want. It does not have to be anything spectacular. The plot could be as simple as a guy goes on a self journey and finds out he was just running from himself, right? Or how about I'm trying to think of things that don't include you being a student and then there's a tyrant teacher. That was one of my first thoughts. I was like, oh, I guess you could write about that. The plot, the goal of a plot is someone is going through a struggle of some sort. A will they or won't they? And the idea behind the plot is considering what the conflict might be. So you have a story of a person and they're going to be going through either a internal struggle or external struggle. So the internal struggle could be about self-worth, maybe they're a selfish person, maybe they are struggling with addiction or something like that. Addiction's a little bit harder to do in what we're trying to do here, but if that's kind of what you want to do. It's easier if you keep it a little on the surface level. But anyway, the idea is maybe there's an internal struggle. Maybe the internal struggle is will they actually do the thing they're supposed to do or won't they? Whether it's breaking up with somebody or moving or taking the job or not taking the job or giving back something that they stole. Like, this is the question of the plot, right? What's the conflict? What's the will they or won't they? What I want you to do is give the main plot of whatever you think this drama would be. Again, you're making this up. Make it fun. Make it something that, is plausible. Don't do, I wouldn't suggest doing something in the science fiction realm or anything that's really big. Try and keep it short, sweet, and simple. Think of it as some of the short stories we had where there's just a little tiny, short, sweet, and simple. Keep it simple. You want, with the plot, I was going to pull this out. Really, what you want to do is include what the exposition is like. What's the beginning, right? What's some rising action? Maybe what's the conflict, and then we come up here to what the climax might be, down to the falling action and the resolution. When you're thinking of plot, this is what I want you to consider. If you need to draw one out, you can draw one out and you could show us that way. But give us an understanding of what is the plot, what's happening, Where are they going? What are they doing? Okay. Once you have an understanding of a plot, again, you're making this up. This is not something that's going to be beautiful and perfect and actually, written out. If you want to, you totally can. I do not want to get in anyone's way of being wild and weird and creative. Go for it. But for those of you who kind of need it to be short, sweet, and simple, just give me like an essence of the plot, and ultimately what will be the dilemma coming. Okay. Once you have an understanding of the plot, you're going to have some characters. Like, who are the people who are going to be in this? Make it easy on yourself. Make it at maybe 2 characters, because obviously there's going to be one who's going to have the moral conflict, and then the other one is going to have some kind of persuasion in some way, whether it's good or bad. I don't know. You don't have to have conflict with the other person. It could still be an internal struggle, but oftentimes you're going to need another person for this. You could do a 1-act play, which is totally plausible. You can do that. I'll leave it up to you on how you want the plot to look. It helps to have multiple characters for this part, because here, when we talk about the characters, I want you to expand on them. Remember when last week we talked about the different types of characters development? How are you developing the characters here? Who are these characters? What's the backstory? What do we need to know about them? This helps your actors. If you were to give this play to somebody, they're probably going to be, as an actor, going, what's my motivation? Why do I care about this character? So that's what I want you to do. Create the characters. Tell us who they are, not necessarily how they look. We don't have to worry about that unless the look is important to the plot, right? Maybe somebody is very stiff and very proper versus somebody who's kind of slacking and wearing the baggy clothes like I'm wearing right now. Right? Like, tell me what these characters, who are they, to help those who are going to play this character. Okay, who are they? That's what we want to know. And how many? If we're going to have a protagonist and possibly an antagonist, I don't know. That's going to be a part of your plot. You're going to have to tell us what's the importance of having these characters in there. Are there any supporting characters? Are there characters that kind of show up and kind of help lead to the next step? Maybe a cab driver steps in and goes, hey, all right, I'm here to help you. And then because of that interruption, sometimes the interruption is important to the plot. I don't know. You tell me. All right. So once you have that, the importance of a play is the dialogue. Remember last week we talked a little bit about how to create an authentic dialogue, or how to be a playwright. Not only from reading those, I want you to take a look at all the other plays that I link into the discussion and see how are they using dialogue to move the story along, to make a feel, to create the character development. What do you see? What dialogue is being used? How are the characters speaking? Fences is one that, again, we talked about before, which, has some inappropriate dialogue. I would rather you pull back from doing that. Please don't. Unless you feel there's an incredible point to it, and then message me and we'll kind of maneuver around. I don't see that being necessary for what we're doing here. But take a look at, maybe understanding, I don't know, Raisin in the Sun. Maybe there's dialogue in there that's important to the point of pushing along the story. The way in which someone might use a particular verbiage. How is that important to who the character is? Maybe a type of slang, maybe a very proper way of speaking, maybe a, quick-witted, what's the dialogue? You're going to have to tell me and guide me in how that looks. Okay, so with the dialogue, I want you to do, at the bare minimum, 15 lines. 15 lines of actual dialogue, not stage direction. That's going to be something different. But with the dialogue, I need you to have at least 15 lines that get us somewhere, that give us some kind of conflict, maybe a resolution, maybe the climax to something. Give us a little bit in the dialogue. You can give as much as you want. You can do way more than that. Hell, you could write an entire play, a whole scene. Don't, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter to me. Okay. But I need it to be at least 15, but shows me that you're trying to get us somewhere. You're trying to say things. You're showing who the characters are based on the dialogue, based on their actions, and you're including some kind of either conflict, climax, or resolution to it. It is best if you use a conflict in those 15 lines to kind of help us understand a little bit more of the tension between the character, maybe between themselves, maybe between another character. You tell me, how does that look? Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in the dialogue. Please take a look at the examples that I give and how they're using dialogue to give rise to the issue at hand. Okay. Don't forget, we need to know the setting. Where are we? What's happening? The reason why it's important to show the setting, because that's also going to help us with stage direction. So when you give your setting, it's going to help us see where we're supposed to be at with these actors. Sometimes very minimalist can work too. You can explain why a minimalist setting is important. Maybe there's like, the setting is the guy's in his apartment and that's it throughout the whole entire theme or scene or act or play or whatever. Maybe that's important. I've literally seen one act where the person did all of their acting in the literal, just in their apartment, and that was it throughout the whole thing. It was hilarious and amazing, and you can do that. And it actually watched them go through an entire I guess identity crisis between trying to get something done. They were writing their own screenplay and there was the struggle in between and they kept getting distracted and all these things. It was really well done. Anyway, setting. What does that look like? Does there need to be a scene change? If there is a scene change, what does that look like? Okay. That leads us into our stage direction, maybe the actions and movements and lighting, whatever is necessary to get us to understand the next part of the particular, scene or the next act, I guess you would say. Okay. Make sure you also include what the conflict is. We do have the plot. We definitely understand the plot, but we need to understand what the actual conflict is. What's the internal, what's the external, what's causing it, what's behind it. We have an understanding of the characters, but now we need to understand what the conflict is with the character. Usually the main character, but the other characters can help understand what the conflict is, if that makes sense. Sometimes you might have an internal struggle, but a character outside of, the character having the internal struggle might say something that goes, oh, light. Okay. And then don't forget we have the theme. We have all kinds of different themes. Themes could be conflict and struggle, identity and self-discovery, power and corruption, love and relationships, social justice and equity, equality. Take a look at those themes. Which one does this play that you were creating work with? What theme is creating this particular play? Okay. Don't forget, if you are going to have any of these themes, you also need to include cultural and historical aspects to it. So if you have a love and relationships theme, but the theme is something like maybe two people who have wildly different political views and they're trying to get together. I don't know, maybe that's something. What does that look like? What's the historical or cultural context if you were to say it's present time, there's two people who love each other, they're very wildly different in political views. Obviously the historical context you would include is what's happening now and the division that's happening within the country. How might that look for two people who are trying to fall in love? The research you would do is the statistics of people who have two very different political views and them getting together. What is the statistic of that continuing or actually, becoming a productive relationship? I don't know. You're going to have to tell me that. So when I'm looking for historical and cultural, those are the things I'm looking for. Statistics, things that back up your statements here. Okay. Also, when we talk about performance context, I talked about before in the last lecture, everything kind of falls into place with the performance context because the performance context is everything, like the way the stage is done, the way the settings are set up, everything that's used, the visual elements, why is it done that way? I would say include the performance context, because it's going to be a summation of everything you've pretty much already said, but explaining why they all come together. Okay. And then once you have the performance context, you're going to give us a bit of context of the author's intent, which would be you. What is the intent behind this play? Why is it important? Why do we need this play? What does it do? Sorry, I got an